If you've wondered what is the path in going from finding something that you love all the way through success to significance, this episode of the Think Bigger Mastermind is going to give you that. I'm here with Tim Clairmont of Clear Financial Partners, and we just had a really fun conversation. I think you're really going to enjoy. It was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was good.
And we talked about that. There were a number of amazing things. One that I think is really worth listening to that comes later in the episode is how to thrive and survive during disruption. Tim makes a great distinction between IQ and EQ and how one needs to be your focus in today's industry in order to survive and thrive into the future. Like regardless of what's happening with artificial intelligence, this will be a great benefit to you. Listen to it, share it. I'm excited to hear your feedback. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it.
We'll make it worth your time.
Yes, we will. So the big question is this: how do those of us with crazy amounts of ambition, how do we think bigger than the building of our own empires? How do we simultaneously seek success and significance, income and impact? My name is Justin Stoddard, and welcome to the Think Bigger Mastermind. So excited about today's interview with really a high-performing and high-impacting individual, Mr. Tim Clairmont. Tim, thank you for being
Thanks, man.
on the Think Bigger Mastermind today.
Appreciate it, Justin. Yeah.
We are, so Tim and I met not too long ago, and I immediately thought this guy'd be a fantastic candidate for the Think Bigger Mastermind, because not only has he found success in his industry, but he's then taken steps to multiply that success, to really find success through other people, right?
Yeah.
Allow his success and his impact to scale. And it's super exciting. I hope everybody that's watching here is going to be inspired to identify where maybe they're at on the chronology. I'm acutely aware that the people that watch this show, listen to this podcast, are people who are ambitious, who aren't okay with just settling for mediocre results or mediocre impact. And so what I would hope that you would hear from this, and what I believe you're going to get from this, is seeing the chronology of going from success to significance, and you're going to be able to identify where you're at along there based on the story that Tim's going to share with us. So this is going to be a fantastic episode, and I'm excited to dig in. So let's get started, Tim. Tell us a little bit. You're in the financial planning world.
I am.
And there's a bit of a disclaimer that people are going to need to hear at some point.
Sure.
Do you want to say that now? I know that
Sure, it's one of those things that is a long thing, so I need to read it.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
So he's going to read
that out of the way.
But just know that it's going to get really exciting after this.
In the financial services industry, anytime you communicate anything to the masses, you have to put a disclaimer on it. It's the most regulated industry in the United States. So the disclaimer is Tim Clairmont is an investment advisor representative with Clear Financial Partners, a registered investment advisor, and a registered representative with Lion Street Financial, which is a member of FINRA SIPC. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of Lion Street Financial and or Clear Financial Partners. The topics discussed and opinions given are not intended to address the specific needs of any listener. Clear Financial Partners does not offer legal or tax advice. Listeners are encouraged to discuss their financial needs with the appropriate professional regarding their individual circumstances. Disclaimer read.
Very good. In other words, if we go totally off the track, they don't want responsibility.
That's right. That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
If Justin leads you off a cliff, they're saying, "Hey, we don't claim that." So,
Right.
All right. So jumping back into the content, Tim, tell us how you got started in financial services. Like, what led you to want to do that?
Sure. It's funny. Like many kids, I would imagine, they have dreams. They want to be a baseball player or football player or whatever, be the next Bill Gates. Mm-hmm. For me, I was reading a bunch of fantasy novels at the time, The Hobbit, stuff like that. I wanted to be an author. I just thought that would be so much fun. Huh. But I was kind of practical, which was weird at 13. So I said, you know what? Writing books, that's tough. Some people get success real easy and other people don't. So I said, let me get into a career where I can be very successful, retire early, and then I can write books and not worry about whether they ever get published.
Right.
And so it was at that time I just got my first paycheck. I worked as what they call a DMO, dish machine operator, at Sherry's Restaurants at the time.
Is that on your business card?
Where my father was. Yeah, it was
DMO.
Yeah, they didn't give you a business card when you worked in the back room. But yeah, that would have been nice. But they made you feel better. So yeah, anyway, I got my first paycheck. I knew exactly what it was supposed to be. I had calculated the number of hours that I had. I knew exactly how much number of hours times the hourly wage, which was negligible back then. I am a little older, and it was so much less. I opened that paycheck and it was like, who are FICA and FUTA and Fed Inc. and Stat Inc. and why did they just rip me off?
What are they doing in my paycheck?
Yeah, that's it. So I went home, I talked to my dad, and I was like, Dad, who are these people? And he's like, that's taxes. And it was right at that time that I had also seen Tom Cruise in The Firm.
Okay.
And so if you've ever seen that movie, they teach you how to legally minimize taxes wherever possible. Of course, there's a lot of shooting and activity and stuff like that. It makes it more excitement, yeah. But I decided, you know what, I'm going to be a tax attorney. I want to minimize taxes for people legally wherever possible.
Pay the legal minimum.
Yeah, and so I actually, that was my plan. I was going to be a successful tax attorney, retire early, write books, and not worry about whether they ever got published because I'd have enough money. In college, I went to Whitman College out in Walla Walla, Washington. I studied economics, and I was going to go become a tax attorney. They had the highest average LSATs in the Pacific Northwest. And I got recruited in my senior year by a financial planning company. And I was graduating in 3 years instead of 4, and so I looked at this 4th year of, if I go be a financial planner for a year, it'll be my 4th paid year of college instead of paying, whatever, 40, 50 grand a year for college. I was like, I'll make something. That's better than paying anything. So I decided I'd do that out of Bellevue, Washington, and figure I'd have more on my resume to go off to be a tax attorney. And after a year of being a financial advisor and teaching business owners to write off 20, 30, 40 grand a year in these qualified retirement plan accounts, things of that sort, I was hooked. I knew I was born for this.
Interesting.
And so 21 years later, I've been doing it. I never did go to law school. I ended up staying in the financial services industry, got my master's degree in financial services and CFPs and all that stuff. And now I get to deal with helping clients minimize taxes, make more money, do estate planning. I mean, the comprehensiveness of holistic financial services is way more exciting than the handful of tax attorneys I've had a chance to run into.
So the 13-year-old dream started to become a reality, not necessarily with the exact role, but the difference you wanted to make, which is, where'd my money go, right? You were able to step in and say, let me help you. There's ways that you can legally pay less of this to other people, and that got you excited. Right?
That did. That's right where I was at.
Perfect.
So, yep.
So now at that point, you found success. You found that you liked this. You started to really grow. At what point did you leave and start your own firm? Like, did you say, I'm going to have my own company?
So what I didn't know at the time is, it felt very selective when they were hiring me, out of college. But I didn't know that they hired everybody with a pulse. So it was pretty much if you could fog a mirror, it was like, because the attrition rate in our industry is just ridiculous. I mean, 9 out of 10 people don't make it through the first few months or 6 months even. After a year, I was that duck to water. I was that 1 out of 10 that was like born for this stuff, and so that worked out pretty well. But because they hired everybody and they didn't want to have any extra liabilities or anything like that, we were all independent contractors from the get-go. We weren't employees. So technically, I was a business owner right away. As an independent contractor, I've been self-employed this whole time, 21 years later, and it was a straight commission position back in the day. It's transitioned to commissions and fees now. But
So talk to us a little bit about, because I think sometimes when we're on the road to success, right? So if we could map this out, we could say you're starting off, you find what you love, you find success, and then maybe you start to scale, and then you go to significance. Okay, would that be a fair chronology here of maybe what that looks like in your opinion, or are they
love,
just something?
Success, scale, significance. Those 4 steps. That sounds pretty good. Yeah, I was. You find something you love or are passionate about that you want to. That drives you. Okay. If you're not driven, I don't think you're ever going to make it to the other levels.
I agree.
So you find that love thing that drives you, and then you experience success in it. And so I guess the next phase of the story would be
scaling.
What was that success like? Well, after the success was the scale, right? And then you want to scale, and you hopefully achieve significance. If you scale successfully.
So let's talk about for those that are maybe have just found what they love, and they're seeking success, and maybe they look around and they say, wait a minute, this isn't as glamorous as I thought. I love it, but this identification that you just had, which is that they're letting anybody do this, right? Or the doubts crept in to say, maybe this isn't such a good profession, right? At first you're like, this is it, I love it, right? And I'm sure those of you that are in real estate, those of you that are in sales and marketing and accounting, whatever it may be, at some point, you fell in love with it, and then doubts started to creep in, right? To say like, this isn't as sexy of a role or of a title as this person over here, right? Or they're getting there a lot faster.
Yeah.
And the tendency is to like, well, I love this, but this I think is going to get me there faster, right? What's the solution for people that are tempted to hop around, even though they found their passion and there's a clear path that they can have success there, but maybe it just isn't quite as sexy, right?
Right.
As something else. Any suggestions there?
Yeah, everything you just articulated, it just opens up so many doors to conversation, and I'm trying to narrow it down to the things that make the most sense, that are going to be most impactful for the listeners. If I boil it down, every job, every career, every path to success, you have to have that stick-to-itiveness through some of the tough times. If you hop around a ton, you start over all the time. It's literally anything you're trying to do. If you're building anything, building a puzzle, building a pyramid of blocks, and you start over, you've got to rebuild your foundation every single time. And ultimately, the biggest parts of success that I've experienced and that I've seen my clients experiencing come from doing all the work to build the foundation and then keeping a solid foundation as you build forward. And then that snowball, as the snowball gets down the hill, gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Most of the growth of the snowball occurs in those later years. And if you keep wiping your foundation clean and starting over, you're missing out on one of the most valuable resources we have, which is time.
Interesting.
That's my answer, I guess, the beginning of the answer anyway.
Well, it's really interesting, and what just showed up for me is, I know when it comes to financial planning, probably the most important variable is time, right? I was oftentimes shared at a young age, like if you start investing now, even if it's a small amount, you've got time on your hands. I was in my mid-20s, right? Starting to make a little bit of money, and all of a sudden it's like, start investing now, and it's like, what, $10, $50, $100? That's not gonna matter. And then you see the charts of like what happens if you just stay consistent at that over time. And the wealth that one can create is phenomenal. And so comparing that to one's career, right? If you stop and pull out your 401k because it's not growing fast enough, and or your mutual funds or your whatever investment may be, because it's not growing fast enough, I need to put it in something big and sexy over here, you start over and you miss that compound growth, right?
If you wipe your foundation clean, it's just hitting reset. You can't get the time back. That's one of the things I appreciate so much about even the listeners right now. Every minute is precious. We only have so many in our lives, and they're choosing to give a minute of their life right now that we can't give them back. Thank you. And my goal is to share things that are so insightful and so helpful and so valuable that they look back and say, that was a good use of my minutes. And that's my goal with my life, with every one of my minutes. A minute can be very long. If you sit and just listen to 60 seconds tick by, watch a clock tick by for 60 seconds, it can be very, very, very long. And yet we only have so many of them. So how you use every minute will have tremendous impact on your experience of life, for better or for worse.
That's deep, man. I didn't expect to go deep, but that was awesome. That's a really good point. So again, thank you, listeners, for investing your minutes here. It's only going to get better. So let's go. Again, what you shared, that is to have success, find something that you love, and stick with it. Don't be so quick to jump to something else because it's not happening fast enough. Right?
Build the foundation.
As long as you can see that there's a path to get to the life that you want, don't be upset if you're not seeing the results right away, right? Like the analogy of bamboo, I think Chinese bamboo, maybe you've heard this before, is that for years it grows underground. You don't see the growth, right? And then as soon as it comes out of the ground, literally in days, it's like the size of, it's massive. I think that's a great analogy for, for those of us that tend to be impatient, right? That it's like, just stick to the process. Just keep making it happen, right? Okay, so let's take the next path. So that's what it takes to get to success. Now you want to start to scale, right? Because it's like, okay, I only have so much time to meet with a certain number of clients, right? For you, for me, for anybody that desires more, you're like, all of a sudden, that doesn't feel like there's enough minutes in the day, right? And so you want to start to scale. Talk to us maybe what your journey looked like when it came to deciding to really grow. You started your own firm, and now maybe you're starting to add additional people. What does that look like?
So that a little bit more in the background, because I think it's important to understand where we're at. In so many cases, if you don't go to the beginning and then take it all the way through and try to jump into chunks, you miss those underlying foundational aspects that are so important. So when I got started into this industry at 21, back in 1997, I took an education-based approach to financial planning. So I was always teaching clients about their situation so they could make an informed decision about what to do with their money. I thought that's the way everybody did it. I didn't know that that wasn't as common back then. And consequently, I didn't think there was anything special about what I was doing. I just kept trying to help as many people as I could to teach them so that they could make an informed decision about what to do with their situation that made the most sense to them and to me. And then it was about 2009, so almost 10 years later that, or a little over 10 years later, that I had attracted so many clients. There just wasn't enough hours in the day to serve everybody that I wanted to serve.
Yep.
And then I listened to this psychologist, and this psychologist spoke. So I started going to conventions, trying to listen to other experts to say, hey, how can I learn more about how to solve problems and improve the situation for everybody? Because I care so much about all these people. And the solutions what provided to me was really sad. The psychologist came up and said, you know what? There are a maximum number of relationships of significance a human being is capable of having, and it's somewhere between 150 and 200.
Interesting.
And I
Even though
realized,
I've got 3,000 Facebook friends,
yeah, exactly.
you're telling me
that. Well, relationships
sorry,
of
there's a group of
significance.
you that
I know. The thousands of people who are listening, it's great. But it's like that relationship with your wife or your kids, or that relationship with your parents, or your that relationship significance where these people are going to be part of your lives for the rest of your life, and you want to have that deep relationship. Well, that takes time, and it takes time to continue to invest that time with those people. And there's only so many hours in the day, and I felt like I was having that kind of a relationship with 600 people, which was impossible.
Yeah.
So realizing that I couldn't help the millions of people in the world personally, I had to scale. And that was the only way I was going to be able to help other people. Right. So what I did in 2009 is I decided, okay, I'm going to bring on another financial advisor and teach them how to do it. And so Courtney Stewart, who's in my office, has been with me for a little over 10 years now. I brought her on. She was about a year into the business, and I said, I need your help to serve more people. And so we started doing that. And that has its own challenges. You're teaching, trying to figure out what can she do that I can't do, what can I do that she can't do, what's transferable, what's not transferable. How do you keep the clients happy as now they're working with another person, and yet you're trying to serve them. And then we ended up doing that again successfully a few years later with Aaron Hessel, who was an attorney. He was actually married to my youngest sister, still married to my youngest sister, I should say. There's not past tense. He's still married to my youngest sister. And so he was an attorney for about 4 or 5 years, and he wanted to become a financial advisor as well. So he kept his law practice, and then he became a financial advisor. And of course, the things that he was able to do and transfer from my skill set were not necessarily the same things that Courtney was able to transfer from my skill set, and vice versa. And so we created this really wonderful dynamic, and I had to, through trial and error, figure out how do I share my methodologies, my systems, my processes with these two individuals to help them be successful and help between the three of us serve even more people. And so basically we went through a lot of pain, a lot of bumps and bruises, and figured out, okay, this works. And then we got stuff that worked, and as I traveled around, talked to a bunch of other advisors all over the world, they were like, I want to know how to do that. And so we decided to launch the Clear Advisor program and figure out how to share all that stuff with other people.
Very cool. And that's kind of the transition from almost scale to significance, right? And those are, you could almost say that those overlap very tightly. But just kind of restating what I heard here is that you realize that, okay, I'm at capacity, I need help, I brought on people, and then you realize that they had strengths that you didn't have, you had strengths that they didn't have, and you all started to develop a process, right? Saying like together, I think we would really come up with something that serves the client at the highest level. And then you began to then realize like, okay, now we've got something special. We're serving more people, more customers are being served. But then in your travels around the country, conversations with others, you realize like other financial advisors were struggling because they didn't have that same model to be able to serve more clients, to solve that same problem that you once struggled with, right? Which is, how do I serve more people? And so your model now became a way for you almost to create significance, right? It wasn't just scale for you anymore. It was now like, I want to help this financial advisor be able to do and experience what I've been able to do, which is help even more people at an even higher level.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Well said.
How would you, let's say across any industry, what did that process look like when you started to create a model? Like, maybe walk us through what those, did you guys have regular meetings saying what's working, what's not? What does the onboard process look like? What is the annual review process look like? Like, were those the components of like, what are the touch points of the client? What are the, like what matters to the client? What doesn't? How do we want to be, like all that stuff? Maybe just, if you could kind of just give us a kind of a blueprint, right? Of what creating a model look like, I guess.
Yeah. So the question you asked is sort of, what's that blueprint of what we did? And the answer is it's a lot messier than that.
It always is, right?
Yeah, right. There's the what did we do, and then there's the what would you do in this wonderful idealistic world. And those are very different answers. So what did we do? I mean, we had so many clients. The demand was so high for what we did. I mean, the world is about supply and demand.
Yeah.
And the supply of competent, ethical, motivated financial advisors that were education driven, that respected the client's right to choose about what they want to do with their money. The supply of those advisors was low. The demand for those advisors was very high. So we had constant clients that wanted to work with us.
Yeah.
So that wasn't so much the issue. The issue was a matter of juggling. It's a matter of how do we meet our promises? How do we meet our own, our motto is we always do what we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do it. And in a world where that unfortunately I feel like that particular motto has slid in its quality for deliverance in the service industry for the last 20, 30 years. That makes you stand out even more, just following through with that. Yeah. But you have to be so careful. You have to underpromise, you have to overdeliver, you have to be careful about what you say and what you promise because you're going to make a deposit in the client's trust bank when you follow through with that. And you're going to take a withdrawal if you don't.
Interesting.
And so it was a function truly of nothing more than a series of promises that we had to keep, and we would struggle as fast and hard as we could to do the best we could for our clients as we made promises. That's what ultimately in this almost organic, cosmic bubbling mix created this. This now, where we're at now. Is that very structured and systematic and replicatable for our, listeners? Not necessarily. If I was going to go back and say, how would I do this in a systematized,
love to hear that,
streamlined way? I would say, first, you have to take the time to reflect. You're going to have to go back and sit down with a sheet of paper and write right at the top and just say, what do my clients or revenue streams, what do they value about what it is that I'm bringing? And if you don't think about that, you're going down the wrong path, because ultimately it's not about what you think they should value, it's about what they actually value that they're paying you for. And so when you get that, then you need to focus on how am I bringing that, what they value, to our customers, to our client base, in a way that they like, the way they want it. And then how do I share what they value in a way they like with other people that are delivering that? As you're going to scale, you've got to figure out, how do I take the things they value the most, the clients, the customers, the people who are paying you, to other delivery sources, and recognize that those delivery sources are not identical to you. You have to find what's the common denominator. What is the common denominator? Usually it's a combination of values, so figuring out your own values. And I truly, one of the exercises we went through, I didn't go through this physically, I went through this mentally, but you could do this physically and it would be great. Write down, grab 52 note cards or 100 note cards and write down every possible value that you could imagine, like love, happiness, faith, fidelity, truthfulness, whatever. Whatever it is that you feel like this is something that means something to me, put it on a big table. And then start eliminating down to 4. You can't, it's not that you don't like the others, you have to pick your top 4.
Interesting.
And so what are your top 4 values? That's probably going to be in alignment with what your clients most appreciate about you and their relationship. It's going to give you more insight into where it is that you want to go. So we went through this process, and for us those 4 values were education, choice, transparency, and empathy. So we teach our clients, that's an education-based approach.
Yeah,
education, choice, transparency, and empathy. And so we teach our clients education, we let them make choices, so we respect their choice. It's always their right to choose whatever they want to do. It's their money, their choice. We're transparent. The only way you lose a client is a negative surprise. So if you communicate in advance all of the pros and cons, the things you can control, the things you can't, the costs, so they don't have a negative surprise, then they're never going to be dissatisfied with you.
Yeah.
And so transparency was huge. And then ultimately when the client turns to you and says, Tim, I've learned, I get it, I'm ready to make a choice, but I'm having a hard time making that decision. What would you do? You have to answer that question with empathy. You have to put yourself in their shoes, not as yourself in their shoes, but as if you were them in their shoes. If you went through their childhood, you went through their situation, is they have to live with your advice for the rest of their life. You only have to live with it for the rest of the appointment. So make sure that the advice you're giving is consistent with what it is that client is going to want to experience for the rest of their minutes.
Wow.
So anyway, so just
Powerful
to give you
stuff.
some insights on how you can reflect and then figure out how to scale that, how to share that. I know it's a lot of thinking, but if you don't think and get on the right path, you're gonna waste a lot of time going down the wrong path.
So 4 values.
Yep.
That's,
4 values. That'll help.
I love it. I love it. It's really powerful stuff. So let's talk a little bit now about this is the process through which you created a model, and now you're working to scale that. And kind of where I want to go with this is let's talk about how you're maybe scaling that would maybe be, again, kind of a blueprint for our audience. We've talked a little bit about that, but I want to go a little bit more.
Yep.
And I want to talk about industry disruption.
Sure.
And maybe how some things that I've heard you say in this interview about even how there's a lot of maybe professionals that aren't as professional that's probably spurred a lot of that disruption. People feel like this provider wasn't that good. They weren't that empathetic. They weren't this and that. I want to talk a little bit about maybe how we defend against the commoditization, the AI.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that hard, right?
Yeah.
If you do some of the things that you've talked about. So
Sure.
You're now scaling your model across the country. Right? Anything that you want to share about that might be helpful for others that really want to have big impact, right? At this point, you've made a great income, a great career, you're really creating huge impact in the lives of your direct customers and even the advisors that work directly with you. But very similar to the problem that you ran into, which is I can't serve all these customers, you're also saying there's a lot of financial representatives out there and I can't service them all, right? I don't have enough time in the day to help other financial advisors. So now it's almost scaling this model. Talk to us a bit about kind of where you're headed, if you want.
Yeah. So you have big dreams, right? It's like you want to do all this stuff for everyone, and I think that's where the drive and the motivation comes from. And then you boil it down to the practical. What can you do that's actually going to make a difference?
Yeah.
And that's really very different. There's almost this soul-sucking sadness that occurs as you realize you can't do all these great things you want to do for every person. But you realize that to make a difference, you've got to have something that's really going to be adopted and implemented, integrated, and assimilated. We talk about, how do we take the knowledge, and we basically what we've done with our Clear Advisor program is we've packaged modules. We've said, look, there's probably 12 key modules that have been very successful and instrumentally successful for us. And we want people to not just hear them and then they wash over them and then they just forget about it and they think about it 3 years from now and go back and listen to it again or what. It's like that's not making a difference. That's not making an impact. So I designed a process. We call it our implementation, integration, assimilation process. And I packaged the modules in 4. We teach 4 modules per term. So we give the advisors the ability to choose. Do they want to do 1, 2, 3, or all 4 modules? And in month 1, they go through and they get exposed to the implementation homework to implement any of those 4 modules. And there's a 30 minutes of homework essentially for each module that is very explicit. Most advisors that are successful out there, they don't want to take the time to think or rethink stuff. They're so busy in their business.
Right, just taking care of their customers.
Yeah, right. So if they could
let
just
alone
say,
work on the business, like I don't have time for that. I'll get to it.
Yeah.
I'll get to it. Oh, tomorrow.
Exactly. So with that in mind, it's like, look, if you just say, look, I'm going to invest 30 minutes. I can do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you those 30 minutes we talked about earlier, right? Okay. And then I'm going to trust that, what you're telling me to do is going to work. I'm not going to question it. I'm not going to waste time doubting it. I'm not going to, if it felt right, go for it and take it on faith and do it for 90 days. And then at the end of the 90 days, if you don't like it, bag it, move on. That's part of growth too. You got to try a bunch of different stuff and keep what sticks. So we give you the implementation homework, basically, on those 4 modules. You pick 1 or 2 or 3 or all 4 modules, and you do the homework every week, about 30 minutes a week. At the end of month 1, month 2 starts, and you integrate. And so it's about, okay, now what's the homework like? How do we take what you just did that was new and start to mix it with what you were already doing successfully with your team and start to integrate it and start to delegate maybe some of the work of that to your team members so that they're handling more of it. And that's month 2's homework. So we integrate all of that new concept, that new strategy. Then month 3, we go to assimilation, where it's like, now how do we get it to the point where we've offloaded 50 to 90% of the workload to our team to support us in that particular strategy so that we don't have to think about it anymore. It's just in the background. You know, when we turn on a computer nowadays, like how often do you really think about the operating system?
Yeah, I don't.
You don't.
Unless it's like slow and I'm like, you suck. Come on.
Yeah, right.
What's the matter with my computer?
you take it for granted. Right. So I want to have all of these modules be something that you just take for granted, that you've implemented, integrated, and assimilated. So you've got it to the point where it's just a part of your practice. You don't think about it anymore. That frees you up to take on new things. And if you're not able to constantly take on new things, you're never going to be able to keep up with the new world. I mean, the robots and AI and all that other stuff you're talking about.
So it's not one conference where you walk out with a notebook that goes on the shelf next to all the other notebooks that you would love to implement one day. We all have them, right?
Yeah, right.
Like walk in my office, you'll see it.
That's right.
And it's also, it's more bite-sized, little bits and pieces that you integrate with what you're already doing.
Yes.
So again, speaking to the listeners, myself, the way to have additional significance is how do you take the success that you've created, how do you modulize it? I think I might have just created that
That's
word.
right. Yeah, I like that. Modulize it.
Modulize it. And then be able to offer it to people in bite-sized, digestible chunks that then once they get that implemented, then they go to the next. Is that kind of like there's this sequence of, and they choose which one they're most interested in, and they bring it in little bite-sized pieces, bring it in, adopt it, and then they move to the next. And okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And in this new world, you know, choice is such a big deal. I mean, we have so many unlimited options out there. I mean, you turn on the TV now. I mean, there's 1,000 different channels probably you can watch. You know, all the movies unlimited that you can think of. So you have to respect these individuals' right to choose in the new world that we're in. And so the way we've structured it, it was much more like a lunch buffet. You know, if you go to a lunch buffet, you don't necessarily expect to eat every single entree that's up there.
Yeah.
We've offered 4 entrees and said, you know, hey, you can have a whole plate full of that one, or you can have a little bit of both, or you can try to eat all 4 and go to town. But if you don't like 1 or 2 or even 3, there's got to be one there you're going to like.
That's a good point.
And so that's kind of the way we built it. Because you got to have that right to choose.
So then these financial advisors, they become, they subscribe to your system, or what does that maybe just like?
Yeah, so we wanted to be able to share brands because, so back to one of the comments you made earlier about, you know, the impact of the image of our industry. I don't particularly like the image of our industry. It's sad to me. You know, the news has focused on the negative experiences that have occurred in our industry. Everybody knows Bernie Madoff's name. You know, that's sad to me. Why is it that negative experience is a known name now? And when you think about the movies that portray our industry, I mean, you know, you can go to The Wolf of Wall Street, or you go to the classic Wall Street, Michael Douglas and, you know, Charlie Sheen. I mean, these are selfish, money-motivated characters that are driven to achieve nothing but their own success.
Right.
And that is so inconsistent with the reality of financial advisors. When I have traveled around the world and met financial advisors, you know, can you find advisors like that? Sure. But my experience is that's less than 5 to 10%. 90 to 95% are these giving people that just take care of their clients. They love their clients the same way that we all love our spouses and our families, and they want to serve them. And yet that's not 95% of the publicity. So I'm hoping to change the image of what it is to be a financial advisor, and to do that, we have to band together under a single flag. And that flag, as I see it, is Clear Financial Partners, or Clear FP, because that's what we built here in Portland. And if I'm going to share that flag with other advisors, then from a legality standpoint, that means that they are signing licensing rights to be able to use my brand, which means they have to sign a document that says, hey, we're not going to misrepresent it. We're not going to look bad. We're going to look good, and we're willing to, you know, to use your intellectual property. We'll have the right to do that. But I want to make the barrier to entry as low as possible, so that I can have as many advisors that I know are these good quality people out there representing the brand, so
you
that
just need a model,
everybody
right?
knows it. Yeah, right.
You just need some of these working on the business problems solved, right? Someone who's had the thoughtfulness to go in and create something that's duplicatable. They just need something to subscribe to, so that the good aspirations and good work that they do can be scaled, right?
Yes.
And better known.
That's
Awesome.
right. That's right.
Let's talk a little bit about industry disruption.
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, artificial intelligence is creeping into any and all service-based industries. I heard a mentor of mine say last night that he's investing deeply in human intelligence instead of artificial intelligence, meaning he goes deep in relationships. I thought that was really well said.
I like that.
Talk to me a little bit about, obviously, they have Super Bowl commercials of a baby doing trades on. Obviously, that's more stockbrokering, right? But you have this image that like it's so easy even a caveman can do it, right? Obviously, that's not directly your industry, but you get the point. Is this entire push that like this isn't that hard? Let computer algorithms do it for you. You don't need a person anymore, right?
Yeah.
How are you defending against that? As I know, a lot of my audience is real estate professionals, right, which are competing against many artificial intelligence plays that are threatening their margins and eventually potentially their entire livelihood.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have to those that are facing that in their industry? How are you dealing with it, and what do you have to offer us?
It's funny. Every one of your questions is like I could take an hour on that question. They're just solid. It's good stuff. So, disruption. There's a lot of ways to address the disruption issue, but I think if you go back to what I said earlier about values and recognizing what is it that your client or your customer is valuing in you, and your best customers, your best clients, and understanding that, you can ask them that. They'll tell you. You'll have more understanding of where you really fit in this new world with all this disruption. And most of the time, there's a lot of times there's a big disconnect between the person who thinks this is what their customers value and what their customers really value.
Interesting.
And in our financial services industry, for example, if you still believe that your customers value the way that you pick stocks or pick mutual funds or reallocate things as a solo advisor, I think you're probably missing the boat. There's a slim chance that you are just that good that's really what they value.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's having that human being to double check them. It's having that emotional relationship. IQ was king in the 80s. You think about Jobs and Wozniak and everything. It was about how intelligent could you be.
Yeah.
And now everyone's brilliant. Everybody can Google the right answers.
Good point.
So, Daniel Goleman says in a high IQ job pool, it's soft skills like discipline, drive, and empathy that will emerge as those who are outstanding.
Because you can't Google that.
You can't, no. And so you have to figure out what is it that you're doing from a discipline and a drive standpoint to run your business, and from an empathy standpoint, it's now about EQ. It's about emotional quotient. What's your EQ, not your IQ?
Interesting.
And how are you going to connect with your clients emotionally? Because the computer can't do that yet. In another 20 or 30 years, it might.
Right.
But for the next 10 to 20 years, if a computer can do it better than you, faster than you, or a big multi-billion-dollar company can do it with the resources they have, bigger and better and faster, you're in a dying field. You need to find your value that the client appreciate. And mostly that's emotional connection.
Well, I hope our listeners paid attention to that. If by chance you were gazing off somewhere and missed that, go back and rewind that. For those of us in service-based industries, that was really deep, really profound, that IQ is not the differentiator anymore. It's EQ. Please listen to that again. That was fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I really think that's a really brilliant way to look at it. Let's talk quickly. You mentioned kind of last point here we're going to make, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure.
Is it you feel like you had this idea that everybody wanted to have a huge life of significance, a big impact. As you've gone about your way, building a business, scaling a business, creating significance yourself, you realize that that's actually a much smaller number than you thought, right? How has that changed kind of your world and the way that you're creating your offers and delivering them to the marketplace? I believe that people that listen to this are people that are of that very small percentage of people that want to think bigger, do more, and have bigger impact, right? Which is the whole mantra of what we're offering here. So how has that affected you? How do you know if you are one of those people? It's okay if you're not, right? It's not your bad person by any means. But for those of us that say, I can't stop here just because I've got success myself, that's not enough. There's more that that I can offer the world. There's more impact that I can make. Talk to us a little bit about kind of your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So everybody, I believe, adds value to this world based on what they're willing to do that others won't do, and what they're capable of doing that others can't do, or both. And the combination of that ultimately will determine success in anybody's lives. If you attach that then to something that a customer base or client base or society demands. If there's a demand for it and you're willing to do it and you're capable of doing it, it's there. The problem is that the things we're willing to do are very different, and the majority of people are stuck with blocks. And it could be blocks of the emotional challenges they're dealing with, or the physical challenges that they're dealing with, or they don't have enough money, or the limitations of time, or they're not in the right job, or they're dealing with their kids, and they love their kids, but they got to focus on their kids and their spouse, and all of those distractions make it so that, not that they're distractions in a bad way, but they make it hard to have focus, and then to make the choice to say, I'm willing to put energy into this making a big impact. And so the majority of people are really just trying to get through the day, and
get home and watch the game. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then they're exhausted, and so they want to make the choice of saying, you know what, I got to get a recharge. I want to plug in my iPhone or whatever, right? That's like, and that, whether that's watching the game or whatever for somebody, and so the group of people that's capable of handling all of those day-to-day things and still has room left to be willing to do things above that to make a difference in the world is just a smaller group than than I would like to think it is, because it's hard. It's absolutely hard.
It's inconvenient. At first, it's not rewarding at all, right? In fact, at times it's risky. At times it's It's all this.
And if you don't see the right path, or you get disheartened because you went down you might have been so close to the right path, and yet you were just a little bit off, and you hit a roadblock, and rather than figuring out a way to get it, you just made that choice to say, I'm not willing to, and then it ends. And it's harder for people to, the people who've successfully conquered those roadblocks, whether it was by luck choosing the right path, by mentorship and getting directed to the right path, or by choosing the wrong path enough times that you got back onto the right path as you conquered that. That's not a common story of successful heroes and heroines. That's something that takes uniqueness. And hanging out with people that have successfully accomplished that just totally amplifies your abilities, because you can learn now in this whole networked world that we're in.
Amazing stuff. I hope you've got value out of this. If not, you might not be the right audience member for this podcast, because I have a hard time coming up with content that could have been better for the stuff that I want to talk about today. So I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. I appreciate it.
I'm super glad that we met, and I look forward to continuing the conversations and helping each other be those people that want to have a massive impact in the world, and hopefully inspiring some others along the way as well. So thanks everybody for tuning in. If this has been valuable, will you please do us the favor of share it out? Whether you're seeing this through Facebook, listening to it on iTunes, whatever it sounds like, do us a favor and share it with at least one person. I really think it's going to help a lot of people. So thanks for your time again, my friend. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Think Bigger Mastermind with me, your host, Justin Stoddard. Now, here's how you can show me some digital love in return. Number 1, subscribe to the show. Number 2, give me a review. And number 3, go think bigger.